This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, but rocking a beautiful Toronto background behind me, full of the lights, the Toronto lights. I'll be there at the end of the month for Frightmare in the Falls with my good friend Lisa Langlois, whose name is going to come up in this interview. And here we are on October the 8th, 2024. And folks, I have the director of The Nest, among other things, on the show with me today. Folks, I give you the awesome Terence H. Winkless. How do you do, Terence?
I'm doing great, man.
Yeah, you came highly recommended by Tommy Kovac, and because he asked me if I had anybody from The Nest outside Lisa, and he had mentioned you, but he did tell me to ask you about John Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon.
Yeah, in what regard? We all
I,
went to school together.
yeah, he said you had some funny stories about that.
I don't know how many of them are legal. Um, Dan was a
Yeah, I can't hear
collector of.
you.
Really? You can't? All of a sudden,
Yeah, there you go.
I don't see what I did different. I
I don't
moved
know.
my face a little bit. Anyway, you can hear me now.
Yeah,
I think this computer is probably on the fritz, but let's try to ignore it.
yeah.
Dan had the most massive collection of porn I had ever seen. But then again, I had never seen any collections of porn. But he had a stack of magazines. He's almost as tall as he was. It was the damnedest thing. I didn't know all these aspects of Dan when we brought him up to be the bad guy in the babysitter movie. Do you know Judson's Release? We made this movie right after school, but got school credit that got me going. The one that the babysitter who gets the calls and the guy's in the house. Dan
When a stranger
insisted on,
calls?
yeah, it's just like that. But before that, before When a Stranger Calls, there was Judson's Release. It's
Okay.
really and really Judson's Release, but there was room in the catalog if we changed it to an F. So it became Foster's Release. Ridiculous detail from 50 years ago, 50 plus. Oh, it was 1970. Long time ago. Anyway, that's the great detail. Foster's release and Judson's release are the same. You can hear me, right?
Yep.
Very good. So Dan learned that we were going to do this movie, which a bad guy makes phone calls to the girl, and he insisted, absolutely insisted, on playing the part of the bad guy. So and since everybody was working for free, working for the notion that if we do a good job, maybe people will notice and we'll get other work, which is, of course, how it worked, at least back then. It's a little different now because it's easy to make a movie you can make a movie on your phone. But anyway, Dan insisted on doing it, and I was utterly delighted that he did. He did a great job, and he was a very peculiar character, as you know. I mean, maybe you don't know, but he was an eccentric guy, and he did write uh, Alien, or he wrote the draft that became Alien. In any case, I think the other guy who, with credit on that movie, got the credit only because Dan was crashing on his couch. I think. Once you graduate, you have to count on the jungle drums to find out things about people. So, and what did you want to know about John Carpenter?
Oh, uh, Tommy said that I believe he said something about you being roommates with them both or something like that.
We had this house in Hollywood off Gramercy. It was on Gramercy off Franklin. And not the, I don't think the where the house is important to the story. And it took a whole bunch of us to afford. They were renting it for $600 or something, but it had enough bedrooms that I could have one, and Dale and Charlie and a whole shitload of us. I think there were seven of us. And Carpenter wound up in the room, sort of off the kitchen, sort of. It was a wonderful house, multi levels, like three levels, and beautifully appointed, beautiful carpets. They should never have rented it to a bunch of college kids. Oh my God, were they
Mm.
nuts? Of course, we spilled, red wine on the white carpet in the living room. I think we paid to replace it, but who knows? It's a while ago now. And John was in the room off of the kitchen. And what story would you want me to launch into? I mean, I can't really say too much. I mean, John's around. He doesn't have as much hair these days as he did when we were kids, but he might sue me if I say too much.
Ah, you certainly got more hair than him right now, don't you?
I've been lucky. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your background and getting into the business because I find it fascinating that you and your brothers were part of the Banana Splits hour, and were you all aiming for show business, or is was that something you all wanted to get into?
My older brother, Jeff, 7 years older, was had ambitions toward being an actor. And at least at that stage, when I was 20, Jeff was 27. My little brother was 2 years younger than I. And he didn't have any particular ambitions. He was still in high school. And I knew I had some ideas about the movie business. It's one of my ideas about the movie business did not include jumping around in a gorilla suit going through 10 t-shirts a day because it was so bloody hot. Oh God, those costumes were hot. The wardrobe people recognized how many t-shirts a day we were going through, and they asked NASA to help us out if there was some way that could keep us cool. So NASA invented this thing that if you put these CO2 cartridges into this little thing, the blue, they could blow cool air over our heads, but into our heads using this sort of tube thing. But the
Hmm.
problem was you wore it on your hip, and but if you wear it on your hip, it is if you fell down, which was the entire nature of the show, a lot of running around and falling down like children, right? That's what we did. So if you were wearing this thing, it would damage your kidney. So we didn't use them. But it was an interesting experiment on their part. I will hand it to them. We wound up using them as kazoos because the tube would come down. No, 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 no. Anyway, what was the question? Was that the question?
Yeah, yeah. Well, between writing, acting, and directing, is there one that you like doing best?
Let me finish the banana splits. You see,
Sure.
my dad used to write Kellogg's commercials for
Uh-huh.
the Leo Burnett Company, and through that, he became friends with Hanna and Barbera. And he learned from them that they were going to do this live action TV show, which was something they'd never done before. So when he learned that, he said, I've got just the guys to be in those suits. He meant me and my brothers, of course. So we flew to California. I drove home from college on a Friday, and my mom said, "You're going to go to California on Monday and try out for this TV show." So we did. It was no tryout. We simply went into the room, picked through some miracle, picked the very suits that we would eventually inhabit, and we were off and running. Why my brother chose the bright green one, the chartreuse one, who knows? He both all three of my brothers are colorblind, and maybe that's why. Maybe the colors spoke to him in a different way. I'm afraid that brother has since been he died quite a while ago in 2006. It was a real drag, and I miss him a lot. I think about him all the time. Not all the time, but a lot, you know.
Yeah.
What was the question?
I was gonna
Ah,
say, between writing, directing, and acting, do you have a preference?
oh, my ambition was always to be a director. But now that I'm an old guy, I just had a birthday last week and I turned 76. I don't have any interest in directing anymore.
I thought you
My,
turned
I
39.
sorry, yes, I'm 39. In fact, I was 39 when I started directing. Ironically, I'd wanted to do it, but I'd always been too nervous when I wanted it so much that I would fuck up the interview, whatever the interview was. Am I allowed to use blue language
Go
here?
ahead. Yeah, please. Yeah.
And I would always screw up the interview because I wanted it too much. But then in March of '87, my dad died. And getting through that, you know, that's the hardest thing in the world. So going to an interview about directing a movie about cockroaches, that was a piece of cake. Nerves? The hell with that. That's nothing. So as it turns out, I lived in Hollywood, which was across town from where the offices of the producers were in Brentwood. It's like half an hour. And I was very excited about doing this. So I didn't want to be late, so I went way out of my way to get up early and go out there, out to where the offices were. And it was a good thing I did because the producer in the meantime learned that I was committed to writing this thing I've been hired to do, which was accurate. But I didn't have any particular interest in the thing. It wasn't something personal. So I was able to hire my friend David Rich to write the thing I was supposed to do, to write the draft, and I paid him some money. It was a hefty sum. I think I gave him half of what they were paying me. And I got the job. I don't know why. I don't know what they had read, but it was from a guy who drove around with any number of scripts in his trunk. So it wasn't like there was some, you know, personal aspect to it that I needed to pay attention to. Anyway, David wrote that draft. I was able to tell Julie Corman that it didn't. No. I was handling that. And because I was so excited, I got up way early and didn't want to be late and dashed across town. And once you're in the room, it's hard for them to say, no, you shouldn't be here. You have to go away. So because I was so jazzed, we went forward and I got the gig.
We just,
I was simply more enthusiastic about it than the other guy they were considering, who had done a little feature, a very nice guy named Jeff Delman. The company wound up hiring him to do the second unit, which he did a great job on.
yeah, we just lost Roger Corman. Any memories of him?
Well, yeah, it's a real drag, isn't it? He was 98. I mean, he had a good run, as we say.
Mhm.
Um, he he was
I,
he was
yeah.
a cheap bastard, no question about it. And everybody who ever worked with him will acknowledge this. in the Howling, he's the guy standing outside the phone booth
Yep.
when, anyway, when he dives into the phone booth, the first thing he does is check for coins, an acknowledgement of how cheap he was. But he was also a very fair guy. He knew he wasn't paying you very well, and for each director, he would give a first-time director a his first-time director's speech, which included a bunch of things, especially sit down. You should sit down because you're going to get tired. And if you don't sit down, you're going to slow down. And if you slow down, the whole production is going to go slower. So his advice to slow down and sit down had everything to do with making a better movie. So I liked him a lot. He was very fair, had a surprising sense of humor. Uh, and but it was Julie who initially hired me because I drove across town out of excitement and got there on time. Yes, she had been calling the producer. God, what was his name? The guy that it doesn't matter. Uh, the guy who drove around with scripts in his trunk of his car, and the one I rewrote was one of them. Was that the question? Roger was great, and after that movie, he sent me to the Philippines, which was really astounding. Um, I had a long chat with Carl Franklin before I went, and he said, "Well, just make sure you put your valuables someplace where they can't find them, because indeed." They would go into the room while you were off during the day. They'd go into your room and ransack it for any valuables. It was very weird. Excuse me.
Well,
Um,
as I mentioned to you on the phone, I'm good friends with Lisa Langlois, of course, who was in The Nest. And my backstory there is that I'm 52 years old, and it wasn't until 2017 that I had really traveled for the first time. And uh, I'd had her on my show twice, and on that second interview, we got talking about travel because she just moved back from Los Angeles back to Toronto, and she asked what was stopping me, and she invited me to assist her at a horror film convention in Toronto. And I couldn't say no to that. And it wound up being my first time on a plane and my first time,
2017.
yeah.
Wow,
And she met,
pretty old for a first like that. Yeah,
yeah, she met me at Union Station, and she taught me how to do the subway system and the shuttle buses. And we went out to dinner, and she was asking me a lot of questions about New Brunswick, and I assisted her at that event. But I'm going to tell you, I fell in love with Toronto. It was definitely a huge upgrade from being in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and the culture there and whatnot. So I'm going to see Lisa at the end of the month when I go to Toronto. So I'm looking forward to that. And she assisted me in getting a passport so I could do Chiller in New Jersey. And
I did that. That was great fun.
yeah, so I've done a few conventions with her where I'd assist her. And yeah, we become really good friends, and we keep in touch. And yeah, I look forward to seeing her. So I knew her
Good.
from the movie Class of 1984. I grew up with that movie. So it's wonderful to have gotten to know her on a personal level, and to know the character she is. And so talk
She
about,
was. She was a good egg. The only I couldn't get her to scream, which when you're making a movie about the bugs that take over the island, you kind of need somebody to scream once in a while. So I don't know how we got around it. We got around it certainly, uh, but yeah, she was a good egg. She had some eccentricities. One day I was directing her on the fly. Go here, go to your right, go to your left, look over here,
Mhm.
and she said she had to stop all of a sudden and said that my her she couldn't she couldn't hear me and her hands went numb or something like that. And I thought, you hear through your hands? It was peculiar, but otherwise she was a very good egg and a good sport, and trying not to get the being sensitive about the stuff that we put her through would have been extremely time consuming. So she wasn't sensitive about it. She rolled with the flow, as they say.
I know she had mentioned to me about an encounter with Julie Corman regarding a shower scene, and she said it was in her contract that the camera could only go so far. Do you recall anything about that?
Remember, her acting coach, Harry Master George, had
Hmm.
told her to wear a sort of plastic thing across her breasts so that if the camera would dip too far south, it would be worthless because we'd see the wrong stuff. I don't know anything about her encounter with Julie, and I don't remember. It was not a big deal.
Hmm.
I mean, not certainly not to me. It didn't hang up the production, and most of the time she was just fine, except for
Okay.
not being able to hear with her hands.
Well, talk about The Nest being your first directional film. Talk about diving into that, the struggles, the hurdles, anything, antidotes like that.
I don't know if I have any anecdotes, but I uh, I had a certain amount of sorry,
Yeah.
I had a certain amount of terror upon being informed that they were officially offering it to me uh, for a grand $15,000, mind you. In
Hmm.
1986, it was fine. It paid the rent while I went out of the house every day. Uh, but I had, I must have said the right things to get into the room. Uh, but uh, but I called up my oldest brother, 14 years older than I, and said, "This is happening. Look." And so he ran it down for me. He said, "Well," and I was terrified. He could tell. And he said, "Do you have to shoot it? Are you the photographer? No. Are you running the sound? No. Are you casting it? Well, only after they bring me people." So he ran down all the things that I didn't have to do. And he said, "So what you need to do is figure out the shots you're going to do that day. And, and, and there you go." And so, oh, when he reduced it to that, and uh, and he was right. So I sat down and I still do this. Not that I've directed anything in quite a while, but I storyboard everything, just everything, and I have my little ways to indicate that it's a dolly shot. I put these X's in the frame, or I'm over shoulder somebody, and I have all these systems. Though there exists in the world actual storyboard paper, which there's reason to believe that my father was the inventor of it for commercials that he did. And
Hmm.
he was the guy who he brought you good morning, the best to you each morning. Kello, double good Kellogg's, best to you. And especially the Snap Crackle Pop song, the one that's so much like Tin Horn's Lament from Guys and Dolls. He was heavily influenced by musicals that he saw in the 50s. And is that what we were talking about? You didn't want to hear about my dad's career. Uh, what did you ask?
Oh, we were talking about this being your first directional movie, and you were going into that. Yep.
So my brother said, let's check off the things you don't have to do, which is like everything except the one thing. You have to figure out where the camera goes and have a list of things, a shot list. So when he reduced it to that, I went, oh, I can do that. My drawings are worthless, but I can figure out what that, they're full of little codes that only I know what they mean. Though I did have a guy, I had an AD say to me, can you interpret these for me? Because I can't make any sense out of them. But indeed, I would show up and give a shot list to whatever AD I was working with. Um, and we were off and running. Even if I added to it or subtracted from it, it gave us a spine to make the day on.
There you go.
And I learned that trick from my brother on that very first movie. He had been he had worked a little bit in the movie business in the old days. He's in Albuquerque these days. He is a guy who writes. He can write normal language to explain things that are scientific in nature that most people can't understand. He can understand what it is that they're trying to do and then put it in normal human language that we can all understand. Anyway, that's his gig. And he explained, just make a shot list and you'll be okay. And he was right. I had one distinct conflict very early on, like the first 3 days of the shoot. Um, Beautiful girl was I don't remember her name happily, was the script supervisor.
Uh-huh.
And Carpenter and I, when we were back on the hill on Glen Oak in Hollywood, talked about screen direction. So it really got into my head about how screen direction works. It really got in there, and everything I watched from that discussion onward, I would go, oh, I see. Oh, they jumped the line there. They fucked up. Okay. So I was deeply immersed and knowledgeable about screen direction. And God, I don't remember her name, but she had, for those of us who got up too early to get to the set, she had uppers. Well, not strong, weak little uppers that were very useful. So when she was guiding us through this setup of some kind, and we're working out where people need to look and she had it wrong. And I had to explain to her, no, you got it wrong. You see, that. And Robert Lansing, who was my star, gave me a look that says, yeah, you're right. And I couldn't get her to back off. So on my third day of the first movie I made, I had to fire the script supervisor.
Oh,
And
wow.
the company was not pissed off at me at all. I think it was on a Thursday. They said, can you just wait till Friday to do that? I forget how we compensated, but we did, and she was gone. Too bad the uppers were gone, and she was a good looking girl, really good looking. But there you are. That's life, screen direction.
Yeah.
She was screen directed right out.
Any memories of working with Terry Treyas in the film?
She and I are still pals. Any particular memories? She was game to do anything required. No, she was great. Um,
I've never had her on here. I'd like to get her on here though, but
Phone number. I can't remember
your volume is
Is that better?
there you go. Yeah.
Something about it, this computer's just sitting on my lap. It should be fine, but it keeps going in and out. I could put you on the table. Anyway, I'll try to continue. I'm sure she would be willing to do it.
Hmm.
She's amusing and she's a gamer. She likes to laugh. So 3970474. She's in Santa Monica or Mar Vista. I'm sure you can find her.
Okay. I'm gonna look her up. See I'll see if she's on Facebook anyway and see where I can go from there. But yeah, your sound is out again.
I'm going to put you here. How's that?
Yeah, you're clear. Yeah.
Is that good now?
Yeah, but your thing is the sound is down again.
I set you on the table,
Yeah,
and
I
now
think
it's back.
I can hear you fine right now.
Is that because I leaned forward?
Yeah, I guess.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you okay.
Maybe if I don't touch the thing, we'll be okay. I'm just gonna leave you there. I'm trying to see if I can find.
Yeah, you're very faint on there right now.
Well, I'm farther away from the mic on the computer.
Maybe that's it.
Try leaning forward like this. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Sounds like that AT&T commercial. Can you hear me now? Hey, Bixby,
There you go.
Bixby, go to Facebook. When it works, it's really great. Hey,
Oh yeah.
Bixby, go to Facebook. Facebook. Idiot.
Technology. We came up in the time when telephones were attached to the wall.
That's right. That's right.
My parents still have an 8-track machine.
They still have one?
Oh yeah, my parents still have one.
It's amazing. Yes, she is on Facebook. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know anything
she's
about
on
this.
Facebook. You can send her an invite or whatever.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Idea what?
But anyway, I was asked about Terry Treyas, and I'll have to find a way to reach out to her.
She's on Facebook.
What's that?
She is on Facebook.
Oh, perfect. I'll
I
have to
just
reach out
discovered
to
it
her.
on my. Okay.
But anyway, I'll try not to keep you too much longer. But
All right. You
I
can you can you can use my name when you reach out to Terry.
oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. That'll
Yeah.
help.
You had another few films I wanted to talk about. You went from The Nest and you did Blood Fist.
Yeah.
Talk about going from The Nest to Blood Fist.
Well, there were. I replaced another guy, a guy named Terry Knotts, because I'm not sure why he had to drop out, but he did. I don't know why. And but it was Terry to Terry. Anyway, I had like 10 days of prep. I finished The Nest. I don't know what we were doing on The Nest, and I think it was finished. It must have been. And Roger Terry Knotts dropped out, and Roger turned to me and said, "Do you want to go to the Philippines and make this movie?" I went, "Of course," because I didn't have anything else I was doing. So I had like 10 days of prep, 10 days to get my life in order. You know, it's hard to get up and leave for 3 months. Even when it's not like I had wife and kids to deal with, but just even my own life. Anyway, of course, I said yes. It had been a year since I'd been hired to do The Nest, and now I was on to the next one, and it was great. It was quite stunning. Yeah, Carl Franklin had advised me to just be careful, basically, because at every turn they'll try to rip you off or whatever. And so I was careful. Yes, what?
And you did a corporate comedy called Get a Clue.
No, that was later.
Yeah.
I did Corporate Affairs was
Oh,
next.
Corporate Affairs. That's what I was talking about. Corporate Affairs. I'm sorry, I got them mixed up. Corporate
Um,
Affairs.
that was my comedy. I
Mm-hmm.
learned I learned a great lesson from that movie. I learned that I'm witty, but I'm not funny, and there is an absolute distinct difference. I particularly learned this when I invited a bunch of people to a screening room so we could look at corporate affairs, and nobody laughed. Oh, I see. I'm witty, but not funny. I can tell a joke, but I can't do it on the screen. So I haven't done a comedy since. I've done things that are funny. Michael York being funny in whatever that movie was
Love
called.
this. Yep.
No, that was the fourth remake of another movie of Rogers. Hold on one sec. It's right there on my wall. I just need to glance at the poster.
Folks, he just moved away from the camera here for a moment to get something.
Not of this earth.
Here we are.
The fourth iteration of Not of This Earth. That was the one I was trying to think of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, none of this earth. Yeah, Michael York, of course, was in Cabaret and a bunch of things, and I know you had mentioned really enjoying working with him.
Well, I was so impressed by the notion that Michael York would look to me for motivation or explanation of a character and I just thought it was too cool that this Academy Award nominee dude is asking me for whatever. Of course, it was just the relationship between a director and his star. Yeah, it was really fun. It was really interesting.
Hmm. Let's talk about The Howling because it's one of my favorite werewolf movies. It came out this. There's a lot of werewolf movies in 1981, with American Werewolf in London, Wolfen, The Howling, even Full Moon Fever or Full Moon High coming out that year. So many werewolf movies, and I've interviewed a lot of people from The Howling, including Dee Wallace. I've had Belinda Pulaski on a few times, and I had Dick Miller on uh, 5 months before he passed away. I was very, very, very lucky I got him, and it was a fun interview to do. I love The Howling, and I wanted to ask you about working on that.
Yeah, I don't think Wolfen was a werewolf movie. It was the wolves come into the city, as I remember. That's the
Hmm?
one with The guy who's the star of Tom Jones.
I know who you're talking about.
Albert
Yep,
Finney.
Finney. Yep, yep.
Into my solid brain. Anyway, yeah, that was. I don't think they were werewolves. I think they were just. They decided to go to the city to show how smart they were. I don't know. That's what my impression of the movie.
Hmm.
What are we talking about? Oh,
The Howling.
the Howling. Played baseball with a bunch of people on Sundays, and one of them was a guy who'd been to went to NYU, and while he was at NYU, he was friends with a guy named Mike Fennell. Mike Fennell is one of the producers of The Howling, and Mike had said to him, "Do you know anybody who could do this?" And as it turned out, Kevin gave Jack a ride home in his car. In the back
Hmm.
of Kevin's car was a script that I'd written. And Jack said, "Is it okay if I read Terry's script?" And of course it was. That's why it was there. And Jack read the script and liked it. It was about voodoo, which had, enough elements that you could see how to get from the voodoo movie to a movie about werewolves. So I went in and met with Joe and Mike. That's right. It went from Jack to Mike to Joe to here I'm in the room. And I had a bunch of ideas and I laid them out and they liked them and I went home and wrote it. And then of course they rewrote me. Joe always liked to get another pass at it by John Sayles. So that's what happened. He did a pass on it.
Hmm.
And so we both get credit and there's a whole bunch of my stuff and a whole bunch of his stuff and it was great fun.
Yeah. I've had Dee Wallace on here a couple times, and I met her at Horrorama in Toronto. And it was the first time I ever encountered somebody at a convention who had a debit machine at her table. So that was cool.
Debit
And I've had
machine.
Belinda Belansky on here a bunch of times as well. Really like her.
What's a debit machine?
Like something you can use your credit card or whatnot on.
So
Yeah.
she had that at her table
Yeah.
so that people could pay for her autograph with their debit card.
Yeah. Yeah, that was quite interesting. The first time I ever encountered that. But she was a delight. Belinda was a delight. I've had her on here 4 or 5 times. And again, Dick Miller before he passed away. Did you ever meet Dick Miller? No, no.
That's what he was a Roger guy that became a Joe guy.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. So
So
are
it was fun to write that script. It was based on a book. Well, the book
mhm.
was about uh, the random girl in a random city gets bit by an animal, and it turns out to have been a werewolf. Who the hell calls me? Nobody. One sec.
Yeah.
Who did? Oh, are you a campaign person? Who is this? Can't
Yeah, I paused it there for a moment there. Let me guess, it was
problem.
yeah.
Find out who this is. Who are you? What do you want? Yeah, that doesn't mean anything to me. Who's Chloe? What? What put it on hold.
Yeah, I turned away for just a moment and then they called back on you.
Yeah, well, it's American Express. I was late on getting them a payment, and I had apparently arranged to talk to them, but I totally forgot. Of
That's
course.
okay. We'll wrap up here shortly. I just wanted to know what's you mentioned you had done Chiller and you've done a few conventions.
Yeah.
I was wondering what's the most unique thing you've ever been asked to sign?
You mean most unusual? You can't, when you use the word unique, it's a binary proposition.
Hmm.
It's one of a kind, right? That's what it means, unique. So what you really mean is most unusual thing.
Hmm.
What's the most unusual thing I ever had to sign? I don't know. Probably the cover. I go to Chiller or whatever the other one is. One's Parsippany and one is anyway. And they'll bring me if I'm in a Banana Splits universe. They'll bring the cover of the Howling.
Hmm.
So it's not wacky, but it's unusual that people I don't know, they go on to IMDb or something and figure this stuff out and then bring that's not related to the banana splits is the howling, but there you are. They'll bring that.
Hmm.
So that's sort of the answer.
Okay. I would mention one more thing about the nest, and this is something Lisa's brought up to me, and she never understood the poster art for the movie because she said that was clearly not her being attacked by the bug on the poster. Any ideas about that poster?
Well, they did I think they did the poster before we did the movie.
Okay, that
I
explains
think.
it.
Do I have the poster someplace? Uh, the
Yeah.
characters in the poster. I think we did a scene. Yeah, we did a scene with the girl in the poster as a sort of pre-titled scene, and it wasn't good enough. It just, it was my third day as a director on my first movie, and it just wasn't good enough. So it didn't make it into the movie. But that happens. There are any number of scenes whenever you make any movie that, for whatever reason, aren't necessary or they weren't good enough or whatever the hell, and they get
Hmm.
cut. Um, So there you are. So what was the question?
That was it right there. But I was going to say, before we wrap up, do you have anything coming up that you're involved in, or either directing, writing, or anything like that?
Writing something with my collaborator, a guy I've been working with since forever. We went to college together, and then after college, like 1974. My God, that's a while ago, isn't it? Anyway, we've
Yeah,
been
I would have
writing
been
together
two.
since. Huh?
I would have been 2 years old in 1974.
There you go. Anyway, we started writing together then. And we'll write together, and then we'll go off our different ways, and then we'll get back together again. And we're writing about a woman flying tons of marijuana in her airplane in 1973. During the gas crisis, when lines were around the block, people lined up in their cars at the gas stations. You won't remember that either, but it was a pain in the butt, and and yeah, it was the beginning of something.
Well,
So that's
yeah.
That's what I'm working on. Is a TV series, actually. That one about a woman who flies her dope in the airplanes. What's it called? Gainesville, USA, set in Florida.
Actually, speaking of TV, I meant to ask you, I'm glad you mentioned that. Working on the Mighty Morphin's Power Rangers.
Yeah, yeah, that was
Yeah.
fun. Yeah, it was fun. If I don't know, arduous, but not really. It was great fun. And actually, the fun part of that show was shooting the bad guys, Bulk and Skull.
Okay.
They were very, very funny. They made me laugh a lot. At
I
least
didn't
one.
really watch Power Rangers growing up. I did catch one of the movies. I do remember oh gee, I'm gonna screw up her name, the Pink Power Ranger.
Amy, Amy something. I can't remember her name.
Oh, I don't remember now. It's all
She was. She clearly had a TV career in her future, and I'm sure she did one. She was on Felicity.
there you go.
Amy, God damn it, what's her name? You've got the IMDb right there, right?
Okay.
Amy Jo Johnson.
Amy Jo
There.
Johnson, that's it. Yeah. I was just looking her up here. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she clearly had a TV future in on her. The I also went out of my way to hire the kid who played Billy, um, David Yost. He was a nice kid, and I think the guy who played yeah, there was also some tragedy there. Twee Twang, the Korean girl, got killed in some accident, a highway accident, and Tommy, Jason Frank is his name. I think took his own life about a year ago. I think. So that's a mixed bag, but that's also quite a while ago. I did that in '93.
hmm
I A guy I had worked with, a DP, a director of photography. I ran into him someplace and I said, "What's up?" And he told me he was doing these things that keep going through directors. They can't find anybody to be an ongoing director. And it turned out to be the Power Rangers. And I went and met with Jonathan Zahor, the producer, the hands-on, the nice guy, Jonathan. And so we got along, and they hired me to do the Power Rangers for, I don't know, 5 years or something like that. But then my friend Terry Trees was working as a story editor, whatever, on on Pacific Blue. And did I want to come and do some of those? And I said, yes, let's leave in the dust the Power Rangers. Though, in a way, doing the Power Rangers was pretty much the same as doing Pacific Blue, because in Pacific Blue it was five cops, and Power Rangers was five, universal cops, so to speak, outer space cops. Anyway, it was great fun. The Power Rangers was, and then it was great fun doing the show that I had to join the union for. Much better, much better, much better treatment of the directors in
Okay.
non-union. When you're doing non-union, they don't have to do anything in particular. You're lucky to be there, and they know that you'll have that attitude. But then when you're in the DGA, they have to give you an office or a place to rest or this, that, and the other thing that they never had to give you when you were doing non-union. Anyway, it was a great jump upwards.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And these days, I actually made enough money doing those shows that I'm vested, so it pays my rent.
Well, that's all you can ask for, especially given in today's climate. Oh,
But
well,
I did that show in Parsippany, New Jersey. That was great fun. People lining up and signing, as I say, signing the Howling cover at a Banana Splits convention or whatever.
yeah, I was there with Lisa back in April. It was the first time I'd ever been in the States. So that was pretty cool. So
You mean Parsippany?
anyway,
That was the first time you'd ever traveled to the United States?
yep.
Boy, okay.
Yeah. So um Lisa's been she's been encouraging me to broaden my horizons.
Well, it's a good idea to broaden your horizons.
Yeah.
First
But
thing I did when I finished work on the Banana Splits, is that what I was doing? In 1969
yep.
was to get on an airplane. It was July 20th. It was the same week we went to the moon. And the first thing I did was get on an airplane and flew to Luxembourg. It was on the cheap way to go at the time was on a Icelandic Airlines. You could take for $400, you could fly to Luxembourg. Never mind that Luxembourg isn't any place; it's just sort of there in the middle of Europe. And but it was great. Yeah, what the heck?
Hmm.
Though I sat next to a guy who had been in America to photograph the activities at the rocket going off, and he had not showered the entire time that he was rolling footage, and he smelled like it. So it was quite the long trip, but that's life. That's what you get in for going economy class in 1969.
There you go. There you go. Well, Terence, it was wonderful having you come on here today and talk about your career and the various films and projects you were involved with, either writing, directing, or acting. Um, Anything else you want to share before we close off?
I need to push off actually.
Yeah,
In a few minutes, I've got the next baseball game, and that's what really counts.
there you go. There you go. Well, Terence, thank you so much for coming on here today, and God bless you. And I wish you a wonderful day, whether you're in the States or whether you're here in Canada.
Thank you much. If you think of anything else, feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. And I'll give Lisa your best.
Yeah, do that. Thank you. Okay.
Absolutely.
A
God
presto
bless.
ciao, as they say in Italian. I'm learning Italian for free online on Duolingo. I tutti i
Well,
giorni io lo studio, i tutti i giorni. I
there
take
you
it every
go.
day.
I only know two languages, English and 5 o'clock traffic.
Gotcha. Take it easy.
You take it easy, man.
Ciao.